I thought it was very violating and intrusive, and I think it has always happened, but people accept that kind of, you know, it happens and they accept it. It's part of what's expected.
Diana Ross is a living legend for many of us, having released numerous hit albums and becoming an aspiring personality for many to come. But behind the music, Diana Ross has a tragic and very controversial life full of scandals. Watch this video to find out about her tragic life, including the reason she hated the other singers in the Supremes. But before we get into what Diana Ross is doing now, we have to know about the early events that made her the way she is. Early life. Born on March 26, 1944, Diana opened her eyes in Detroit and was second out of the 6 children her parents had. Her original name was meant to be Diane Ross, but her mother mistakenly filled out her birth form as Diana. Regardless, her close friends always referred to her as Diane, and she was comfortable with that name. Having a large family, it took a lot of work for the parents to provide for their children, and they faced some difficulties managing their budgets, but could get by with thoughtful spending. Things were going fine for the Ross family until the mother got sick. When Diana turned 7 years old, her mother was diagnosed with tuberculosis, causing her to become seriously ill. Worried about her children, the mother sent them to live with their maternal grandparents in Bessemer, Alabama. Having the reality of the world hit Diana, she was affected badly by this turn of events. Fortunately, her grandparents were Baptists who provided their grandchildren with love and helped their families in their times of need. This helped Diana's mother make a speedy recovery, and the family reunited again to live in Detroit. However, Diana's mother wasn't out of harm's way just yet, and would meet her fate later in this tragic story. Diana aspired to become a fashion designer, and her seriousness in the craft pushed her to take multiple classes like clothing design, millinery, pattern making, tailoring, and much more. In the evenings, she wanted to take modeling and cosmetology classes, but didn't have funds to do so. Luckily for her, Smokey Robinson, her neighbor and the future founder of Motown Records, under which Diana became a superstar, loaned her the required money to attend those classes, which greatly shaped her understanding of the things happening behind the scenes of the big stages. However, she still was in a pinch over money, forcing her to take on different tasks to earn extra income. It included providing hairdressing services to her neighbors and becoming the first African-American busgirl of Detroit at the young age of 14. Early career. Diana started her career in singing just after a year when she was 15 years old. A member of the male vocal group called Primes scouted her to join Primettes, their sister group. Alongside Florence Ballard, Mary Wilson, and Betty McGlone, the group went on to win a talent competition in 1960, solidifying their authority in the domain.
I don't think we felt like we were stars. We felt like we were still growing. We were still becoming. We wanted to make good music, and we wanted to travel the world.
The Primettes later auditioned for Motown, one of the most famous record labels at that time. Berry Gordy, the founder of the record label, happened to hear Diana singing and wrote in his autobiography that it stopped him in his tracks. Impressed, Gordy approached her in hopes that he could secure them for himself. But seeing how young they were, Gordy advised them to finish high school before taking these big steps. Losing her spirit to perform, McGlone left the group a few months later, replaced by Barbara Martin. And though Diana was also taken aback by this refusal, she didn't give up, as she didn't want to be underestimated just because of her age. So the group offered extra help for Motown recordings, often including hand claps and background vocals, and while they faced challenges, the group got to record 2 tracks with Diana as the singing lead. Her dedication to rise through the ranks didn't stop there, and she helped out her group members by serving as their hairstylist, makeup artist, and costume designer. Soon, they started to get more regular songs recorded, which started to gain regional popularity but couldn't break through the national barrier. Supremes. Seeing their success, Gordy agreed to sign the group contract officially under the condition that they change their name. The decision fell upon the hands of Ballard, the only group member available at the time, so she chose the name Supremes.
The Supremes started out as the Primettes, and we were actually 4 girls: Betty McGlon, Florence Ballard, Diana Ross, and me.
After finding out about this, Diana was a little upset because she feared that they would be mistaken for a male vocal group. But things went smoothly for a year, and after that, Barbara left the group, reducing them to a trio. After this, Supremes released their first hit record, and Gordy assigned Diana as the lead singer. Soon after, they started releasing more hit songs like Where Did Our Love Go?, raising awareness about their group both domestically and abroad. It was not long before Diana started showing up in different interviews. While it was a good thing that she was gaining popularity pretty quickly, it came with its drawbacks on her personality. In 1965, Diana began to own the mistaken name on her birth form, which came off as a huge surprise for Ballard and Wilson, who were comfortable calling her Diane. She also fell in love with Gordy and started an affair with him, made her relationship public, and surprising many, as Gordy was married not too long ago. Their secret romance was rumored to have started when Gordy was still a married man, which was later confirmed by him. But things didn't go as she planned, and ironically, this relationship would eventually lead to Diana's miserable life. Conflicts. Conflicts started to occur between the group as Diana was favored by Gordy a lot and given special privileges. Of course, she put in the effort, but Ballard didn't like it and objected to this occasionally. Eventually, she started having issues with her weight in addition to the worsening alcohol intake, which led to her dismissal from the group in 1967. It was truly unfortunate for the group, or so it should have been, but Diana didn't seem affected by this, even though they had been through a lot together. Cindy Bird's song simply replaced Ballard, and with that, Diana started to assert more of her dominance on the group. Things started to work her way, and the group was renamed by Gordy as Diana Ross and the Supremes. It was an underhanded tactic employed by him, as it allowed them to charge a larger performance fee for featuring Diana as the lead and earn more profit from their performances. It was from this point that Diana's life started to turn dark, engulfing her in a series of tragedies in the future. Solo career. Seeing her success, Gordy's obsession with Diana grew, and his demands started to give Diana severe anxiety. She stopped eating, which ultimately led to anorexia. It got so bad that Diana collapsed on stage during one of her performances in Boston. She had to spend some time in the hospital to recover from overworking herself to the bone. But Gordy was unfazed by this and planned to keep things as they were. It was a mistake, as the hit songs from the Supremes meant nothing if it would lead to the performers' burnout, rendering them useless for their next shows. He planned for her to create solo records which further pressurized her, worsening her condition. It also came at the expense of the Supremes, who couldn't uphold their popularity without Diana being the lead. Diana also got tired of Gordy's schemes and broke up with him due to his obsession. However, being in a professional relationship, they couldn't cut off contact with each other. Right after Gordy, Diana started a relationship with Robert Ellis Silberstein, a famous artist manager, and they got married in 1971 when Diana became 2 months pregnant. But little did he know, she was carrying a dark secret, something that would be revealed much later in the story. When Diana gave birth to her daughter Rhonda Suzanne Silberstein, things seemed to go pretty well for the couple. Diana gave birth to 2 more daughters in 1972 and 1975. It felt like Diana had finally found her happy ending, but unfortunately, things were only worsening as time went on. In 1971, Diana started her solo performances and became famous. She worked on multiple movies and did pretty well, even getting nominated for several awards, including the Oscars. But when it came to Mahogany, a movie that was going to be an achievement for her and probably the most crucial role she could ever take, the filming behind the scenes ruined everything. You see, the film was produced by Motown, the same Motown where Diana started her journey. But just a few weeks after the shooting, the director Tony Richardson was fired, getting replaced by Diana's ex, Berry Gordy. Unfortunately, things didn't work out between them, and it got so bad that Diana left a shooting just because of him, never coming back to act with him around. So they had to use Diana's body double to complete the filming process, as they were too deep inside to cancel it halfway. And while they got fairly decent reviews from the box office, Mahogany dealt with harsh reviews from the critics. As Diana didn't know what to do in this situation, she handled it pretty badly, and her career started to fall from that point on. Around 1977, Diana and Robert Silberstein started having arguments that affected their marriage. Unable to hide it from the public, they went their own separate ways in the same year. It was later revealed that Diana's firstborn, Rhonda, was not actually Silberstein's daughter, but instead Berry Gordy. Yes, they broke up long before Rhonda's birth in 1971, but this affair said otherwise. It just went on to show that Diana's actions behind the doors were controversial. She revealed the news to her daughter when she was only 13 years old, causing her to break down. In 1976, Florence Ballard passed away. When Diana attended the funeral, she was criticized by her fans that it was because of Diana that Ballard had to leave the group. Sure, they had their differences, and Diana might have done some injustice, but having her eyes opened to such a cruel reality affected her deeply after that. She just went to attend her friend's funeral, yet met with harsh words from the people who adored the fallen idol. Diana spent 3 years as a single mother, and in between had a relationship with Smokey Robinson while he was still married to his first wife. It seemed as if another person's life was about to get ruined due to Diana's whims, but this time it was someone she held dear. It was Claudette, one of the few friends she had left. But a year into the affair, when Diana found out about Smokey's lingering feelings for his wife, she ended it on the spot. It might have been pity towards Claudette, or envy towards another woman's charms that made her give up on Smokey, making her single again until 1980. In 1980, Diana started dating Gene Simmons, bassist and co-lead singer for the band named Kiss. While Gene was the complete opposite of the previous men she dated, he had one thing in common with the rest of the bunch. He had a girlfriend. Yes, Diana fell in love with an already established guy. Again. It all started when Cher, Gene's girlfriend, suggested that he go with Diana to choose a Christmas present for her. On the surface, it looked like two friends went on a shopping trip, but to her surprise, Diana took a fancy to him and got romantically involved in their lives. Now, Cher considered Diana to be her best friend, so she trusted her with the task. Little did she know, she was in for a big surprise. It wasn't long before Gene started to change his behavior towards Cher, ultimately dumping her and starting a relationship with Diana soon after. But even this affair couldn't last long, and Diana found herself single again in 1983, 3 years after dating Gene. Apparently, Diana left him because she thought that Gene had rebuilt his relationship with Cher. Again, it seemed like Diana got jealous because of another woman, but we can't know that for sure. Failed Supreme reunions. In the early 1980s, fans circulated the idea of the Supremes' reunion tour, which was supported by many, showing Motown that they still had a love for the group. However, most of them declined the idea, leaving only Diana, Wilson, and Birdsong to perform a few songs before parting ways. In other words, it was a failure that didn't blow up so well. But the fans didn't give up and anticipated another reunion in 2000, in which the same 3 members would participate and make a tour called Diana Ross and the Supremes, Return to Love. However, Wilson declined the idea on the basis that Ross was getting offered double the amount that Birdsong and Wilson got combined. And although Birdsong, along with 2 other members, decided to join the tour, it didn't succeed and had to be cancelled halfway through. Unfortunately, this was it for the Supremes, as they couldn't reach anywhere near the accomplishments of their past, mostly due to the absence of the original members. Had Diana confronted Ballard and Wilson differently, the end result might not have been so tragic for the group. Second marriage. Not looking back on her past relationships, Diana moved on from Gene and met Arne Ness Jr. in 1985 and immediately got together with him, marrying him just a year after their first meeting. He was a divorcee and had 3 children, making Diana their stepmother. She herself had 2 sons with Ness, named Ross Arne and Evan Olav. It seemed as if a similar pattern would repeat here and Diana would mess up their relationship, but it was different this time. Diana truly loved this man and spent 15 years with him, the longest she had spent in a relationship. But her husband? Let's just say he had other plans. As a Norwegian shipping mandate and a passionate mountain climber, Ness loved adventures, and though he knew about Diana's genuine feelings, he didn't reciprocate them and fathered a child with another woman in Norway. This led to a huge conflict between them, which ended with their marriage in 2000. It was the first time Diana was on the receiving end. Having her heart broken this way, she didn't know what to do. The things she did to other people's relationships came back to haunt her. Ness didn't live for too long as he died in an accident during mountain climbing in 2004. Facing death. Diana has faced her fair share of deaths, witnessing her mother's death in 1984. She succumbed to breast cancer, and it came off as a shock as she didn't have much idea until it progressed into its last stages. But it didn't just end with that, as her brother, Arthur Ross, along with his wife, were killed by 2 men in 1996. Both of them were tied with ropes and wires, strangled necks with plastic bags, and suffocated to death. Their bodies weren't discovered until 2 weeks later, when some neighbors reported a foul smell to the police coming from their house. Combining that with Diana's heartbreak in 2000, she fell victim to alcohol consumption. Her family started to notice Diana's reliance on alcohol to cope with her losses and ultimately got into substance abuse. She was arrested for driving under the influence in 2002. Although Diana tried leaving this toxic habit by admitting herself to a 30-day rehab in a facility, she couldn't fully get it under control and left the center early to continue with her coping mechanism, facing a 2-day sentence in prison. Although Diana Ross is a successful star with a glamorous life on the surface, she has been in a suffering cycle for most of her life, making some people suffer because of her and getting hurt by others. But it doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve another chance. Despite her mistakes, selfishness, and misery, she went down in history to be remembered as a shining light for years to come. Her influence spread to many other famous personalities like Beyoncé and Michael Jackson. Let us know in the comments if you think Diana deserves to be forgiven. Run-ins with the law. Even for one of the most successful and acclaimed entertainers of all time, Diana Ross was not immune to brushes with the law that generated negative headlines and publicity. Several legal issues exposed the struggles and personal troubles behind her glamorous public persona. One of Diana's most high-profile legal battles stemmed from a dispute with a former employee, Gail Davis, who had served as her executive assistant from January to November 1982. Davis alleged that throughout her tenure, she carried out her duties professionally and competently, with Diana herself recognizing the quality of Davis's work. However, the working relationship abruptly ended in early November 1982 when Davis voluntarily resigned for reasons that were never publicly disclosed by either party. In the wake of Davis's departure, Diana sent a letter to contacts and colleagues in the music industry that contained provocative statements about her recent former staffers. The letter stated, If I let an employee go, it's because either their work or their personal habits are not acceptable to me. I do not recommend these people." Explicitly named in the letter were Davis and 6 other former employees recently dismissed from Diana's team. For Davis, the letter's contents were shocking and deeply upsetting. She felt it created the completely false impression that she had been fired by Diana for inferior or unacceptable performance on the job. In reality, Davis maintained that she had been a devoted, hard-working assistant who chose to move on of her own accord while in good standing. Seeking to protect her professional reputation, Davis requested a full retraction from Diana. When that failed to materialize, Davis proceeded to file a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against her former employer in 1983. The suit alleged defamation and sought $1 million in compensation, as well as an additional $1 million in punitive damages. In response, Diana's legal team attempted to have the case dismissed entirely by arguing that her letter contained nothing more than subjective opinion protected by free speech, rather than any outright false statements about Davis's competence or character. While a federal judge in Manhattan initially agreed with Diana's position, the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit later reversed that ruling. The appeals court stated that the case should proceed to a jury trial because Diana's letter could reasonably be interpreted as a statement of fact, calling Davis's professional abilities into question. Ultimately, rather than leaving the matter up to a jury, Diana and Davis opted to settle the lawsuit privately out of court in 1985 for an undisclosed sum paid to Davis. Nearly 15 years later in 1999, Diana again found herself in legal hot water stemming from an incident at London's Heathrow Airport. The 55-year-old singer was arrested after allegedly assaulting a female security officer who was conducting a routine body search before Diana boarded a Concorde flight to New York. Diana accused the officer of improperly touching her during the screening process. According to an eyewitness, an infuriated Diana reacted by touching the officer's chest in retaliation, yelling, "How do you like it?" She proceeded to blast the disgraceful body search policies to reporters, asking rhetorically if they would ever touch a man in the same they handled females. After initially boarding her flight, Diana was removed from the plane in tears by police officers who arrived to question her about the alleged assault on the security worker. She was then placed into the back of a police van.
I felt very uncomfortable about it, and I wanted to complain, and nobody listened to me. And I actually reacted because I was very upset. And I tried to complain, and nobody paid attention.
3 years later, in 2002, the 58-year-old entertainer had another damaging brush with the law when she was arrested for drunk driving in Tucson, Arizona. Police received calls about a vehicle swerving erratically on the road and found Diana behind the wheel of the white rental car. A breathalyzer test measured Diana's blood alcohol content at 0.20, more than double the legal limit of 0.08 at the time. The police report also documented her failed attempts at roadside sobriety tests, including struggling to stand on one leg and count, as well as making mistakes while attempting to write out the alphabet. Diana's own claimed excuse was that she had only been trying to rent a video and got lost driving her rental car. Despite being cooperative with officers after the traffic stop, she still faced charges for the DUI incident. Diana versus Wilson feud. Despite achieving iconic status together as the original members of the Supremes, the relationship between Diana Ross and Mary Wilson became strained and dysfunctional over many decades. The root causes stemmed from Diana's insatiable desire for solo attention and stardom that began fracturing the group's cohesion from an early stage. As an original founding member alongside Diana and Florence Ballard, Mary Wilson experienced the incredible heights of the Supremes' massive global success and popularity. However, she later came to the shocking realization that she had only amassed around $100,000 during the group's peak chart-dominating years, between 1964 and 1970. The reason Wilson and her bandmates saw so little of the immense profits from their string of hits was because Motown Records had controlled all of their finances, legal affairs, and business dealings. At the time, Wilson, Ballard, and Diana were just naive young artists who deferred all those responsibilities to the label that managed every aspect of their careers and lives. But as the Supremes' fame and spotlight intensified after their breakthrough, Diana began actively fighting to separate herself as the singular focal point and lead voice of the group. She was ruthlessly determined to elevate her own profile above Wilson and Ballard's, forcibly pushing them into the background as her supporting singers. Part of Diana's efforts to stand out involved beginning an affair with Motown's founder, Berry Gordy himself. Her intimacy with the label's boss provided her leverage and ally to prioritize her own persona and image over her groupmates. Gordy was fully invested in aggressively establishing Diana as the crown jewel solo star of his label. Diana's tactics to visually set herself apart included making last-minute costume changes just before hitting the stage, so that she would be dressed in different attire than Wilson and Ballard. During performances on national television, she would allegedly stretch out her arms to intentionally obscure and block out her fellow Supremes' faces from being seen by viewers at home. In her memoir, Wilson exposed many of these upstaging antics, writing, "She craved attention, and in her attempts to get it, she could seem almost ruthless. Her self-centered, spotlight-hogging behavior caused frequent hurt feelings, jealousy, and tensions within the group dynamic over being diminished and minimized. Sometimes she would throw a childish tantrum, then moments later pretend it was all a big joke, that she was just being silly. Her bluntness could be disconcerting, and feelings were hurt. We saw Diane's actions as the product of thoughtlessness," Wilson recalled. A Supremes labelmate, Carolyn Gill of the Velvelettes, shed more light on Diana's attitude, stating, "To Diane, there was just one line of separation. You were either rich or poor. She always made it very clear she wanted no part of being poor or having anything to do with the humble roots and backgrounds the rest of the Supremes came from." By 1970, when Diana officially departed for her solo career, her relationship with Wilson was permanently fractured beyond repair. "We did lose our luster," is all Wilson said about the feud. "We're always sisters, but we're not friends in terms of picking up the phone and saying, 'Girl, guess what's happening today?' We're like distant cousins who don't see each other anymore." Attempts at a reunion constantly failed over the subsequent decades, with Wilson and Diana trading bitter accusations through the media and in their own books and interviews. When Diana pursued getting the group back together in 2000, Wilson's first bitter response was, "What took you so long?" Diana felt Wilson's anger and resentment was so deep-rooted that Wilson would never truly be satisfied, telling Barbara Walters, "I think if we offered her the moon, she would not have been happy."
What I'm saying right now, I send her all my love. I can't, do any more. I don't know what I can do. I can sit down and talk to her, but do you think it's going to change her feelings?
Diana insinuated the root of Wilson's seemingly unending bitterness towards her was personal tragedy, stating, "She's had a lot of pain," continued Ross, referring, presumably, to a January 1994 driving accident in which Wilson sustained serious injuries and in which her 14-year-old son Raphael died. "She is targeting me. I see such unhappiness coming out of her."
Actually, it makes me quite sad because I do think that we need to answer some of these things that are really not correct.
For her part, Wilson made it clear in brutal honesty that Diana's egomania, narcissism, and craving for the spotlight destroyed the cohesion and original bond of friendship between the Supremes. She began an affair with Motown founder Berry Gordy and would double-cross her bandmates by slipping into a different dress from theirs at the last minute, to set herself apart on stage and make herself look bigger than the rest of us.
I think Diana's into her own, stardom. She is a diva, a superstar. So sometimes it's hard to go back.
The group's former manager, Shelley Berger, bluntly characterized the Wilson-Ross feud as, "When you go down the road with those two, Sometimes you want to scream. I love them both dearly, and both of them fired me. All the bullshit goes with the territory, and they both have their own territory. What should have been a united, triumphant celebration of the Supreme's incredible artistry, cultural impact, and phenomenal success instead devolved into many decades of jealousy, anger, finger-pointing, and venom between Diana Ross and Mary Wilson.
Part of Diana's rise to diva status was to demand and receive a separate dressing room, with Flo and Mary as the background singers being relegated to the secondary dressing room.
Later years to present. In the 2000s, Diana continued capitalizing on her iconic status with high-profile appearances and projects. In 2004, she graced the cover of Essence magazine alongside her daughter Tracee Ellis Ross to celebrate the publication's 50th anniversary. That same year, Diana took center stage as the featured performer for the Billboard Music Awards tribute to her longtime friend and collaborator Stevie Wonder, honoring him with the Century Award. 2005 was a particularly active year as Diana lent her vocal talents to charitable causes like the Tsunami Aid, a concert of hope to raise funds for victims of the devastating 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami. She also joined forces with makeup brand MAC to launch her own Icon Cosmetics line. On the music front, Diana injected new life into her catalog by releasing duet versions of classic songs. She teamed up with Rod Stewart for a remake of I've Got a Crush on You, which became her first Billboard chart entry in 5 years when it hit number 19 on the adult contemporary chart. Diana also found success pairing with the group Westlife on a new version of her 1991 hit, When You Tell Me That You Love Me. The honors and accolades continued rolling in as Diana's career longevity was celebrated. In 2005, she was recognized as an honored guest at Oprah Winfrey's Legends Ball, alongside other prominent African-American cultural icons. As Oprah herself stated about the gala, it was a 3-day celebration honoring 25 African-American women in art, entertainment, and civil rights. 2 years later, in 2007, Diana received the prestigious BET Lifetime Achievement Award, cementing her as one of the most influential Black artists of all time. Her incredible impact was further validated later that year when she was saluted as one of the honorees at the Kennedy Center Honors Program. 2008 saw Diana's talents tapped for a different arena as she performed at the U.S. Open tennis tournament as part of a special tribute to sports legend Billie Jean King on August 28th of that year. Her artistic achievements were further validated in 2012 when she finally received her first career Grammy Award for Lifetime Achievement. During that ceremony, Diana also had the honor of announcing the nominees for the prestigious Album of the Year category. One of Diana's most esteemed honors came in 2016 when President Barack Obama awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
With over 25 albums, unforgettable hit singles, and live performances that continue to captivate audiences around the world, Diana Ross still reigns supreme.
The nation's highest civilian honor. Her iconic life, pioneering music career, and trailblazing activism made her an obvious choice for the prestigious recognition from America's first Black president. Despite reaching her late 70s, Diana has continued striving to connect with fans and remain engaged in her first love, music. In 2017, she launched her first fragrance called Diamond Diana through the Home Shopping Network, with the entire inventory selling out within hours due to overwhelming demand. Then, in 2021, at the age of 77, Diana released her 25th career studio album, Thank You. Significantly, it contained her first original music since 1999's Every Day is a New Day album, as she wrote and recorded the entire Thank You album during the pandemic lockdown period. Now heading into her 80s, the legendary Miss Ross isn't showing any signs of slowing down her incredible work ethic. In mid-2023, she kicked off a major U.S. concert tour dubbed the Music Legacy Tour to celebrate her biggest #1 hit records from her iconic catalogs. And for 2024, when she turns the milestone age of 80 years old, Diana has already announced plans for her next outing, the Beautiful Love Performances Legacy 2024 Tour, that will reunite her with fans across North America once again. Through all the ups and downs, successes and struggles, Diana's life has been defined by an unyielding passion for music and performing. As she writes on her own website about her enduring motivation, "Put some positive music in your chain of thoughts. Think gratitude. You can't stop thinking, so think good thoughts.